Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmitz_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmitz.
Welcome into Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, and you. We'll try and decipher what's real out there in the world of hope and college football and what's really, truly out of reach. You can join us today at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Find us on Twitter, Chris Schmidt at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbal, and email chris@HailVarsity.com. Coming up, Mike Babcock will join us from Hail Varsity Magazine, HailVarsity.com. Mike Schuhart, Shuey, going to talk a little golf with us, and we'll let him weigh in on what he believes to be true for college football. Brad Edwards next hour, and some open phones at 5:20 for you, a Jock Doc to wind things up. So let's get to it. So you have two different reports out there, one from Milwaukee and another from a independent journalist, Jeff Snooks, and he is with 11 Warriors. So I want to say this about Snooks. He is not some dude in his basement with a meth pipe, and think of the character from Silence of the Lambs. That's not this guy.
Are you referring to some other people who have made some reports on Twitter within the past week?
No, listen, man, if you have enough gall to be in contact with somebody that's telling you information and you've got a Twitter handle, have at it. Go for it. I'm not doubting and I'm not believing. It's their ability to inform and put things out there. We're all consumers. What stock are you buying is the better question.
We're all desperate consumers right now.
Dude, it is so frustrating, and we'll get into some of James Franklin's latest comments coming up. And we'll lay out the Snooks plan that's kind of the Gene Smith plan, but Gene Smith has said, no, that's not happening. But you've had this story by Snooks picked up by Sports Illustrated, reported by Sports Illustrated. You've had Clay Travis of Outkick the Coverage, his site, put this out there. And it's been the buzz since last night on social media. It was a Facebook posting. And the guy, Jeff Snooks, has done a lot of books on Ohio State. I'm sure he has somebody he's talking to or with that's pretty credible. Or here's what we're hoping to do for fall football. Otherwise, there's the winter plan that's been reported by the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Portrikis, I think is the reporter. I'll firm that up shortly. But you have Barry Alvarez appeared on Dan Dockich's show yesterday about things that are in the works for winter. And, you know, I'm more interested in fall. And if you get 6 teams to participate in the fall and you end up going home and away without a Big Ten championship game, that would at least give Ohio State a shot to have a say. Because that's the truth of this is you have Ohio State and Penn State that are 2 top 5 teams, and you've got a loaded Ohio State team that just will not get to participate for a championship. That's big picture view if we're talking Big Ten cred. And right now the Big Ten has no cred because of the jackass leading the conference in Commissioner Warren. We'll hear from him in his latest beauty interview with the Sports Business Journal in a moment. And yeah, I'm name calling. I'm just that frustrated because you should be able to move forward and play football. If your region is safe and the appropriate medical experts deem it safe enough to play flag football or youth baseball or high school football, you should be able to play college football, period. And your league should let you. And we need some clarity, and we need some transparency, and we need some answers. Is there going to be another statement later today? Maybe. As to the why the Big Ten decided what they decided. I am betting a lot of money on what Rob Zatechka told us yesterday. A healthy portion of this isn't just health and safety. It is ego. It is hubris by the Big Ten, and the wrong people have the commissioner's ear. Could be governors. It could be presidents. And if there are 8 schools that don't want to play football or can't play football or are scared to play football, fine. Let the 6 or 7 that want to go do it, and we'll mail you a care package with some zeros behind it. You can stay united in that way and still split up whatever money you get. But to stand and roll the dice that best case scenario, the 3 other Power Fives cancel in a week and a half or 2 weeks, so you look right in first, that's a gamble because I don't think it's trending that way. Brad Edwards will have more on that. Or at worst, say they only get a smidgen of a season because there's outbreaks. And you're pulling back to put all your money on a winter or a spring season. Well, if you hit a roadblock in the fall, you're not going to crank things up by spring or winter. You're not going to do it. There's no plan right now by the Big Ten commissioner or the Big Ten conference. They're relying on coaches, and they're holding on for dear hope. Here's Commissioner Warren. There's 3 parts to this. The interviewer did not want to rehash last week, so he didn't ask him, hey, by the way, do you have any specifics, some data, some points that you can give us as to what formed your decision to, we got to get this right, postpone and not cancel? But this is 2 minutes. We'll never get back, but I want to play it for you because this is the latest statement, an interview from Commissioner Kevin Warren 8 days after hitting the nuclear button for the fall.
Personally, take me through what in 8 days. 8 days ago, you canceled the college football season, canceled fall sports. Personally, take me through what that week has been like for you. You've really been sort of right in the middle of things.
Yeah, well, one of the things I want to make sure that we clear it up is postponed instead of canceled. They postponed it. But, as you know, John, you being a Maryland graduate and being a passionate Maryland graduate, it really is an honor and a blessing to have an opportunity to work in the Big Ten. I mean, we have 14 of the most prominent schools in all of the United States, not only academically, but also athletically.
Don't care. Next comment. The second part of this 3-part non-answer.
So, last week has been, very emotional for a lot of different reasons. One, when the decision was made, based upon, medical advice to postpone all of our fall sports, but especially our football season, there's wide-ranging emotions. And that is really what makes the Big Ten the Big Ten. I mean, not only do we have talented student athletes from an academic standpoint, but we have talented student athletes from an athletic standpoint. And we have very good teams. We have some of the best coaches in the country and some of the best athletic directors and presidents and chancellors.
Listen to them and let them play. End of discussion. Period. Listen to their chancellors and presidents. If they say, yes, we want to play, find a way. There needs to be increased heat on this commissioner to either walk back his crappy decision or get him out of office. period, because he isn't leading. Last thought here from Commissioner Warren.
So anytime you make a decision collectively, in the conference with our schools that really, especially, this year, in this pandemic year, I think everyone, this has been a really hard year on everyone. And as you alluded to in your opening, from a social justice standpoint and the George Floyd, murder, and Breonna Taylor and Armand Arbery, it has been, 2020 has been an absolutely challenging year. And so the last 8 days were challenging also, from an emotional standpoint. Anytime you make a conference makes decisions, like that, is that you always just have to keep in mind that that you want to do what's right by our student athletes.
You're not listening to them. You want to do what's right by your student athletes. Listen to them about their cries for help to be able to play. It's real easy. Reconvene. Go back to the drawing board. Get in front of your Zoom computer. Get a better connection. And hear out your coach's plans to play in the fall. Because winter and spring, we'll get into this now. We'll hear from James Franklin in a bit. So the revised Big Ten football schedule could feature a January start date. Big Ten officials are working to revise the schedule. And you've got Penn State Athletic Director Sandy Barber said so in a meeting Monday, in a meeting with reporters. Multiple football sources have told the Journal Sentinel yesterday that they want to start as early as possible. So what does that mean? January 3rd, the final week of the NFL regular season. You've got indoor facilities that could be tapped in Big Ten country. That's Indianapolis, that's Minneapolis, that's Detroit. And you could have triple headers on Saturday starting in January. And that way it's not 4 degrees outside and you're jacking around with trying to play in the snow. I don't want to play in the winter. I'm sorry. If it's all we get, I'll roll with it completely. But I still want this hope, this Jeff Snooks idea and information about 6 teams playing twice in the fall to happen. I don't want to mess with a 9-week schedule where there's 8 games in January 1st through February 27th, maybe a bowl game. And the thought here is the old bubble format. Guess what? A lot of your good programs have already had a bubble set up now. You can't tell me that what Nebraska has done or asked their student athletes to do isn't their own little fortress. And it's worked out pretty well. Michigan's had their own little fortress. Notre Dame, not a great example right now, but their football program has had their bubble set up. Oklahoma has had a bubble set up. Teams have adapted and adjusted, and guys have followed suit. They've tried to stay away from mingling with folks that may be asymptomatic. I mean, that's been a priority for a lot of these football programs.
And if you remember, Oklahoma's program got more positive COVID tests once their players left their quote-unquote bubble.
Yeah, once they allowed a weekend pass. I mean, people are going to be people, and some guys may or may not make the best decisions. So the thinking here is it's post-Thanksgiving. You get to campus back in December where no one's around. That way the student body is not there to infect your football team. And then you ramp up to start the year in early January. So instead of New Year's Day bowl games where the ACC's playing the SEC or the college football playoffs going on, you can start your regular season where if you're Nebraska, you're playing Iowa twice, you're playing Ohio State twice, you're playing Penn State a couple of times, Iowa, I already said. I'll take it, but I don't want it. Figure out a way to make something happen this fall. I'm begging that this again, botched interview by Warren raises more eyebrows for folks that have the power to remove him. And I'm begging that the parents that descend on Big Ten headquarters on Friday get enough media coverage where the pressure makes an adjustment happen. That's your only hope as a Nebraska football fan, that you're going to get more smoke and more outcry and parents connecting with viewers, and then people who may not care about Big Ten football or fall football find the human interest side of this, and then they're like, oh man, these kids are getting hosed. James Franklin expressing frustration with a Zoom call, expressing frustration with the communication process that went into the Big Ten's decision. I don't necessarily have an issue with the decision. Sure you do, James. But I have an issue with the process. I've got an issue with the timing. It's challenging to keep getting up in front of my team with no answers. And you got zero answers, and you got a mulligan today on the Sports Business Journal. And Commissioner Warren talked, filled airtime, said nothing. Mike Babcock going to join us. We'll get his take on winter or fall, what he believes with some of these reports. Hail Varsity continues, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio lesson?
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Thanks for your time. Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal. We welcome in historian, author, Hall of Famer, and a voice for Nebraska football for 4 decades, Mike Babcock, with us at MD Babs on Twitter. Mike, as the world turns, man, another day and some hope and some pessimism all mixed into one. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. You know, Smitty, you waver too much. You're like Kevin Warren. You don't come out and say what you want here. I don't know whether you want football or not.
I'm not wavering. I want fall football. I want fall football, my brother. Yeah, my tap dancing skills are not good. My dancing skills are worse, and I want a new commissioner. I want a new leader in the Big Ten office, and I'm having a toy aisle fit like I'm 4 years old about the reality of this, and I don't know what to believe with the post from 11 Warriors, Jeff Snooks, about behind-the-scenes work going on. I don't really care much for the winter idea. Let's take a bunch of kids and run triple headers like an NBA bubble to 3 bubble sites around the Big Ten. I don't know. Babbers, you've seen the news the last 24 hours. What do you think?
It just everything that comes out, it's just more confusing, and you know, I'm not as down on Kevin Warren as a lot of people, only because it's his first year, and I still say that there's that the decision is made by administrators, and we need transparency from everyone, not just the commissioner, but all the people that were involved in that meeting. What happened there? Who said what? Was there any kind of a vote? And you know, it seems like it's semantics every time somebody makes a comment about that. Let's find out. I mean, was it administrators that were in favor of the shutdown, but they wanted the commissioner to take the responsibility so they could go back to their coaches and say, well, you know, we were supportive, but this is the way it worked. That's what I don't understand. And you say new things come out every day, but I don't know what to believe. And that's, you know, maybe that comes back on the commissioner, because whenever he's been asked a direct question, he doesn't give a direct answer. I mean, the clip that you played, he was asked a question, and he was talking about Black Lives Matter. I mean, that wasn't the question.
Babbers, a thought with this Gene Smith plan from 11 Warriors. I mean, do you think, could it be possible that there's behind-the-scenes action going on And right now you've got 4 schools trying to flip 2 schools, trying to flip Wisconsin and Michigan. And I think your AD at Michigan and your head coach at Michigan for football got a real problem with the president because of his medical background. And can Barry Alvarez fight the good fight with his president? Because it sounds like Iowa's president and AD and coach are on the same page. Same for Nebraska. It sounds like Penn State's on board. Ohio State for sure. And so there's your 4. And get us to 6 and let the 6 go at it this fall. I don't think the SEC, the ACC, or the Big 12 are going to pump the brakes. Maybe there's still time to do that, but I think they're even more hunkered down now because they haven't even shut down. And I know Notre Dame's stopped practice today and tomorrow, but I mean there was no movement after Monday with the North Carolina outbreak to stop practice for North Carolina, and that's one of the schools in the ACC.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing that we don't know. I go back to a little bit of what Rob Zatechka said yesterday. Is that did the Big Ten jump in there because they wanted to be first to make this decision, make this announcement? I think that the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, I think the Big Ten should have been in that same camp. Is that you should proceed and make the decision later after you see what happens, because this is things change almost on a daily basis. It seems like we get different opinions on things, like I said earlier, and I don't think you should have made the decision at the point that you did. Because it could be that those other conferences don't play, but they're waiting to see what happens. And but it wasn't a good start at Notre Dame. It wasn't a good start at North Carolina. That's for sure. And there are some other colleges that are in that situation. So, maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see in the next week or so that it's not going to be a wise thing to try to do. But I think you should have left that opportunity open, and that's created the mess I think that they've got. Because if things get worse on campuses as they start to open up, maybe the parents, maybe the players, people would look at it in a different way.
Mike, with the parents going to the Big Ten offices here on Friday, do you think that they could be the difference that the coaches and ADs and players couldn't in getting this football season back to playing in the fall?
Well, it's just one more thing. If the players and the ADs and I don't know where administrators fall in this whole thing, again, if they can't get it done, I'm not sure. Parents, maybe, but we're not talking. I just don't. I don't know if you respond, how you respond in that way, and that's why I take the easy way out, I guess, and say I just wish they would have waited, as the other conferences are, and continued to do some things, and see what happens. And if you got bad things that are starting to happen, or it's you feel like they are, then you make the call. But just to be first, just to be the first Power 5 conference to make that decision, I don't think you gain anything from that. And even if if the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC at some point they realize, hey, we can't go forward with this thing, there's a little bit of a recruiting advantage there, because you can say, well, look, we tried, we stayed with it, and look at this other conference, those other 2 conferences, they didn't. And, I guess we knew the Pac-12, what was going to happen there. That was bound to happen, I think. But, yeah, I don't know if the parents can have that kind of influence or not, unless there is, something like Smitty said, unless there's something already going on behind the scenes, then that might be the tipping point.
And there needs to be larger and louder outcry about revisiting the decision. And Maybe you get media coverage. Maybe you get sobbing parents. Maybe you get angry parents. I'm betting on both based on the frustration level that exists on Twitter from a couple of Ohio State parents. You've had some prominent parents that were in the medical field pen their letter for Iowa. 81 Nebraska parents have gotten their hand-delivered letter to the Big Ten office. I mean, it's all there, and there'll be strength in numbers. Just sit down and revisit. And it comes down to, do you look worse reversing your decision, Babbers, or do you look worse sticking with a bad decision?
Oh, boy, that's a tough question. I think in this case, if you reverse the decision, you probably look worse because the assumption is that, well, you made it on some kind of substantial basis. We just don't know what that basis was. But then you reverse it, and it's like, well, you don't wonder how substantial that was in the first place. And that's the thing that they're probably looking at is, you know, how are we going to look? Now, that's another factor that gets thrown in there. How would we look if we reversed our decision?
Well, I think public opinion would be like they would crush him, but I don't know how much credibility is already. I mean, what's left to crush? I mean, he's been getting smoked for 8 days, but there would be a camp out there potentially that says, well, good, you're letting your teams, you're listening to your coaches, you're listening to your players, you're listening to your presidents, the ones that want to play. You can still let them move forward in the fall. I mean, there's still time to dial back and say, all right, Sparty, and God forbid if Michigan can't go, and Rutgers, and you know, there are some of us that can go forward in the Big Ten. I've reconsidered that, and yeah, let's go put a schedule together because it's safe, and I mean they're playing every level of football in Ohio except football in Columbus.
Yeah, well, and to say reconsidered, they may not have ever considered that possibility.
Yeah,
you know, as we'll let, if we've got 6 schools that are willing to go ahead with it, we'll let them go ahead. But you know, then there's implications to that too. Then if you're the 6 that are not involved in that, I think there's pressure on you to say, well, okay, if they're doing it, we're going to do it. But we don't know where the what was the impetus for this announcement in the first place, and I can't believe that Kevin Warren just went against the majority of what people said in those meetings.
Well, I think there's a division. Clearly, but there's a division of everyone plays football in the Big Ten. I don't think football's a priority for everyone in the Big Ten. No,
I agree with you, Smitty. I agree with you. But if there's a majority, or if half of them want to do it, then I think you've got to, the commissioner doesn't just come out and say, well, we're not going to do it because whatever, and then, well, it didn't say because whatever, because there hasn't been any whatever in response to that question of because.
Well, we'll hang tight, Babbers, and hope for some news, or at least more of a directive statement from the Big Ten. Maybe that happens today, or maybe there's reconsideration, or maybe Kevin Warren, as a parent himself, is swayed and moved by other parents who want their sons and daughters to play ball this fall. Babbers, it was good to chat, good to get caught up, good to clear the air on this, and we'll see if we get something by the end of the week.
Keep up the good work, Smitty.
Hey, Babbers, take care, buddy. Appreciate you. It's Mike Babcock, historian, author, Hall of Famer, 4 decades of Nebraska football excellence. Mike Schuart's on the way. We'll hit some golf. We'll get Shuey's take on some football. Hail Varsity continues.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Well, the lawyers are getting involved now. We'll tell you about that. Good old Freedom of Information Act has been filed by a pretty prominent sports lawyer we talked about yesterday. I want to be on the golf course right now with Shuey. Mike Schuart, Wilderness Ridge Golf. as we check in with Shuey. Shuey, help me out with some college football. Can you make a call and get us some fall ball, buddy?
Man, it's sounding more likely, huh?
Well,
I'm kind of excited.
I hope the 11 Warriors cat is accurate. I hope there's some reality to 7-figure funding checks that go to the University of Michigan that may be yanked if the school president doesn't come around. And Barry Alvarez could use his tone and stature to intimidate. It's done it before on a football field.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get those alleged two schools to flip and join the haves that want to play ball this fall.
I'm kind of excited because I think it's going to happen, actually.
Okay, so really, so you're buying in that there.
I'm buying in.
Okay, I love you. I think there are some behind the scenes things probably happening. I hate this winter idea. I really don't want Detroit and I love Minneapolis, but Minneapolis or where's the other spot? Indy. Give me a triple header of January football on January 1st when everyone's playing bowl games potentially. That'd be all big. That'd be very Big Ten.
Yes, that'd be weird. But man, I think there's a lot of traction to this, and I really think something's going to come of it. So it's got some legs. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, a lot's just going to depend on if you get major outbreaks like you're hearing from other schools. Mm-hmm. That'll slow it down a lot. Like Notre Dame, North Carolina.
Yeah.
They open things up and they shut things down. But one of the things I had always thought about, it's like, how come the Big Ten didn't go to these colleges, these football programs, and see what kind of protocol they have in place that are protecting these kids?
Exactly.
I mean, it just makes no sense. They didn't do anything. They just had a group of guys that just kind of said, this is the way it is, getting some information from other people that don't know anything about any of the programs and what they're doing and how they're combating basically COVID, and they just made it a blanket decision. And it's like, it just never made any sense to me, And it's sounding that way from other people that you talk to or things that you read about, the Penn State president. It's like, I don't even know there was a vote. Was there a vote? It's like, really? It's like, but you don't know what's real and what's fake and all that stuff. But
Mike Schuart's with us, Wilderness Ridge Golf. It's been golf weather at Wilderness, man. It has been just phenomenal the last week, and we'll get to some golf in a second. Shuey, you've been involved in meetings with administrators, and you've been part of the Big Ten. You've not been part of the Commissioner Warren Big Ten, and that's a blessing to you. But what do you think went down? Knowing the personalities that exist, not all, but the stereotypical personalities that exist at some of these Big Ten institutions with the presidents and chancellors that really probably don't give two damns about athletics.
Very much so, which I never could understand because it's like, but that's an academic for you. I mean, their academic is more powerful than the athletic in their minds. Unfortunately, the athletics is what drives it. They don't believe that, but unfortunately, they make all the money. So, but I mean, it's I don't know. It's like there's too many things that are vulnerable and that are affecting. Not just football, not just the university. And it makes no sense. I mean, I don't understand what they're thinking. How can you have kids on campus in dorms, but yet cancel a football season? That makes no sense.
That tuition check, Shuey.
That's exactly right. I mean, then you're having intramurals? Give me a break. It's like, come on. You mean you're trying to tell me that's safer than all the protocols that have been put in place for the football team and all the things they're asking those kids to do to stay basically safe? And it's like, it just makes no sense to me. But it's just, a lot of it is a liability issue. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have to protect themselves so much from the liability of what could possibly happen. That has a huge bearing on it. because it's like. But it makes
we were talking to Vince Powers last week, and Vince knows the law as well as anybody, if not better, and he wasn't super sold on the liability aspect, but I could see maybe we were talking with Zadiska yesterday, and maybe the malpractice side of it. I mean, so yeah, maybe some liability. I don't know. I mean, the NCAA hosed things with the non-waiver side of things a couple weeks ago, and it's just a mess. But level of excitement for a winter football season?
Not very. I mean, I don't. I mean, I think that's a huge mistake because who's going to play?
Who's going to watch? I mean, we'll all be starved for football, but yeah, I mean, it's and Saban said it best. It's JV football, brother.
That's what it is. Your star players aren't going to play. They'd be idiot. You'd be an idiot to put him out there as a coach.
Yeah.
Because it's not. What is it for? Nothing. It's basically just playing football. Mm-hmm. It's intramurals. It's like I'm not going to put my. If I had a stud that I could not afford losing, that's the last guy I'm going to put out there. And then all of a sudden, in a short period of time, then have another season. It's like no way. It's like those guys are smart enough. They're not going to do that. The player's not going to do that. The kids aren't going to do that. I mean, that's jeopardizing the players more than anything. It's like that makes no sense.
Shuey, I wanted to switch to golf real quick. Two things. I got a couple minutes left. A, Northern Trust. Who do you like? B, what's going on? Fit Friday this Friday at Wilderness?
No Fit Friday this week.
Okay.
Then we got the show next week.
Yeah, a week from Friday. We're going to be on Shuey's deck at Wilderness, baby.
Yeah, can't wait. So we've got a few days off from Fit Friday. We'll start those up because we got some companies that got some new product coming out, so they want to do some fall introduction to some of their new product with Callaway and Mizuno and some other companies. So sometime September, we'll start those up with some new products that are coming out for next season. That'll be exciting.
All right. Are you circling Patrick Reed for the Northern Trust? TPC Boston, you going with Rory Spieth? I know Koepka's out. Tiger. Who do you like?
You're gonna get a young guy. You're gonna get a young guy that you haven't heard of much. Well, like Abraham Answer.
Okay. Honest Abe, says Shuey.
Yeah, Abraham Answer. That's a name to look out for.
Okay.
Gordon, another rookie out there. Last name Gordon. He's another up and comer.
Okay. So, Shuey, I am writing the days down, man, as we get closer to that Wilderness Ridge show a week from Friday on the 28th.
Can't wait.
Man, it'll be good to sit with you. It'll be good to see you. Mike Schuart, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Go see Shuey. Go swing the clubs. Shuey, we'll talk to you soon, buddy. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right, buddy. Appreciate your time. Brad Edwards coming up.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Final time this hour. Hail Varsity presented by the Nebraska Lottery. You're going to get Elijah Herbal's NBA playoff assessment. How about old Chuck Barkley, baby? Call it a shot with Portland.
I mentioned Portland on the show Monday.
I know. Chuck Barkley, since like last weekend, has been going Portland. You and I both like Lillard a lot. And for him to make the plays down the stretch, Charles touched on with Greenberg the matchup problems there are with Portland and just how on fire Lillard was. Caught most of the highlights of it. Saw a little bit of it before I crashed out. Impressive. But we'll before we say goodbye, we'll kind of get some thoughts. We've moved up Bill Dolman to tomorrow, just to mix in some college football and some NBA. And I'm sad that he won't be on Friday with us, but from a timing standpoint, we got to get Billy D. Spent a lot of years with the Rockets. His take on, we'll spend probably like 3 hours on Nebraska with him. And just that angry parent that is going to show up at the Big Ten office on Friday. That'll be all right.
Parent singular?
as a whole, like many one large angry parent from many parts of the conference, all saying the same thing. Why?
Well, did you see the news about the Yale test, which I think we also talked about Monday, which is that now the thought is they could get 90 to 100 tests done in under 4 hours.
Yeah, you can test Saturday morning.
Yeah, and then play the game at 11.
Yep. And Coach Snodgrass tweeted that out earlier.
Yeah.
From York.
It's just the Big Ten was premature in this. If all the teams can get this test, which it seems like they're going to be easily accessible once they're being mass produced.
We're going to call our shot and dictate what happens with college football. Because we're the Big Ten. We've got an ascot and a cigarette holder. I'm kind of like leaning to start hating this conference. And it's taking me a long time to get there. Before we moved into the neighborhood, because my Nebraska degree is now a Big Ten degree. It just changes. Before moving in, I disliked their 11 a.m. kickoffs, and I thought they were boring and awful. After getting pulverized by the Big Ten for a few years, I have bowed a knee and said, wow, much respect. You guys are vicious, and you play football like Nebraska used to play football. And you still have Ohio State and Penn State. And now, I want. Can we get Commissioner Delaney back just for a year? We'll pass the hat, whatever you want, Jimbo. Just come back and make some sense of it.
I had doubts with the Big Ten when they added Maryland and Rutgers back in, 2013? I had doubts, but I trusted Jim Delaney's leadership. Well, now that Jim Delaney is gone, it's been a dumpster fire.
There is no such thing as leadership in the Big Ten anymore. There is within each individual university in some instances. I have no question or qualm about Nebraska's leadership at all. Brad Edwards is going to dive into some college football with us. Get his take on what to believe, what he believes with the Big Ten. And is there any endangerment moving forward here with the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12? Hour 2 coming up with Hail Varsity.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmitz_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmitz.
Great to have you back. Hour 2, it's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal. The Big Ten has spoken, an announcement, a statement, a letter, an open letter that came out about 5:59 Central Time. We'll talk with Brad Edwards in just a second. But you had an overwhelming vote by the Council of Presidents that said it wasn't safe to proceed with fall ball. So I want to know what overwhelming means. Is that 8-6? Is that 12-2? Is it, all the different ways. Was it 7-7? Still not specific. We'll get into the medical data that's not posted, that could be posted. But they get into specifics of the factors that led to the Big Ten decision. Transmission rates on the rise. There's too much unknown. Concerns about contact tracing with the Big Ten. And a couple other items. The mitigation process, physical distancing, full contact with practices and competitions. It became increasingly clear that contact tracing and quarantine would be a risk, and accurate and widely available rapid testing may help mitigate those concerns, but access to accurate tests is currently limited. Significant concerns also exist regarding the testing supply chain. So the way I'm interpreting this in like 5 minutes to turn it around is that not everybody was able to do testing, tracing, and turnaround as quickly as some other schools. We still don't have a vote number. We still don't have that. We welcome in Brad Edwards with ESPN College Football Insider, College Game Day at @JBradEdwards on Twitter. Brad, I don't know if you've seen this thing yet, but it's been a crazy 8 days. I know we talked last Wednesday kind of on the aftermath of the Big Ten's decision to postpone. Commissioner Warren had another sit-down with the Sports Business Journal today. Still didn't really answer any direct questions about his reasoning, but a statement was put out. As you look at some other schools, specifically too in the ACC, with students coming back to campus and COVID numbers going up, with Carolina suspending athletic practice and activities till after 5 today, Notre Dame stopping practice today and tomorrow. What do you anticipate? Is this just a pause, or do you think there's real concern where there may be reconsideration by the ACC moving forward about a fall season?
Oh, I think there's huge concern. The question is, to what degree, does the positive testing have to, or I should say, to what level does it have to reach within the team for there to be action taken? Now, with Notre Dame, they've been saying for a while that if students are not on campus, that they're not going to play football. Mm-hmm. That you can't treat the football team differently than the rest of the student body. So it seems like Notre Dame might be walking the tightrope a little bit more than some of the others at this point, given the way that they've been saying that publicly. So, I do feel like Notre Dame right now is very much up in the air, and it's dependent on what happens on that campus over the next week and a half or so as to whether the football team is going to be allowed to participate this season. Now, can the ACC still go on without Notre Dame? Absolutely. I mean, you hate to be revising the schedule again at this stage, but they can certainly make that happen if they need to without Notre Dame. I don't know. So there was also a story today that Ole Miss had 13 positive tests on the football team itself, which is different from North Carolina. North Carolina's issues are within the student body. Mm-hmm. I think there might have been a little bit on the football team, but it was more what was going on in the student body itself. So it's kind of apples and oranges at this point, but Notre Dame is the one, based on the news of the last couple of days, that I would feel like is hanging in the balance the most. But I think any of them, if things get progressively worse, any of these conferences or any specific teams are, subject to having to call it off. And at this stage, look, you remember, it wasn't that many weeks ago that Michigan State and Rutgers were in full quarantine mode because they'd had too many positive tests. It's one thing for that to happen in July. But at this stage, if that were to happen, then there's some real concerns about whether a team could even be ready for its opening game, and that affects the rest of the conference, and then it just becomes a much bigger deal. Brad Edwards with us. Brad, I want to switch to the Big Ten. You've covered college football a lot of years. You get a statement now from the conference, an open letter. And what's your assessment since we last talked about the Big Ten from a PR standpoint? They have been getting crushed. The narrative has shifted away from, Nebraska's angry, to, man, where's the leadership in the Big Ten? And the commissioners not made that many favorable impressions to certainly the schools that want to play this fall, but just from a national standpoint. And what should you do if you're the commissioner of a Power 5 league? There's no question. Right? Yeah. The silence up to this point has been deafening, some would say. But that's the most surprising part of this, is that the league didn't seem ready to provide answers. It's one thing when players and parents are asking, and that's significant enough. But when the coaches are asking the questions and the coaches can't even get answers from the league, James Franklin had indicated that he was frustrated with the lack of answers that he was getting. What do you attribute that to? And of course, The surprising thing about this letter, as I read through it, you had mentioned when it says the vote was overwhelmingly in support of postponing fall sports and will not be revisited. You said you'd like to know more about what the word overwhelmingly means. I'd like to know more about what the word vote means, because there have been a number of stories, and I'm sure you've discussed them in the last few days, from people who, were either in the room or were connected to people in the room who have questioned whether there actually was a vote. And I think one maybe even went as far as to say, well, it was really more of a robust discussion. There wasn't actually a vote. And for him to come out here and phrase it that way in this letter, saying, yes, there was a vote and it was overwhelming, I don't know. I think that opens it up to more criticism. And there's certainly going to be more questions. And as you've probably seen today on social media, there are quite a few media members at this point who have filed freedom of information request with the 13 public schools in the Big Ten, trying to get information related to this decision. And I'm sure, the truth's going to come out. And I don't know. It just seems to me, Chris, like what do you have to hide? Because every impression has been that they made the decision based on solid evidence. And if your answer is simply that there's still too much risk involved and we're not comfortable with the risk, that's a perfectly acceptable answer. It's not going to be the answer that most people want to hear, but it's an acceptable answer. And why that couldn't have been the answer immediately, I'm not sure.
The risk side of things, and you've got to assess that. You've got your job is to promote education, promote athletics, and keep kids safe that are coming to your school. I mean, safety's important. We get into the part of things when it comes to liability. That's been discussed. From a timing standpoint, you can say it's still very risky, but still not cancel. And the more I've thought about this and talked to others, health and safety is part of the conversation, Brad, but the Big Ten and the ego part of it, wanting to be a big dog. You're already a big dog with the SEC based on what you earn. But they sure as heck, it looks like, wanted to be first in the pool so everyone can pat them on the back if this thing gets canceled. Ego's huge with this, and I hate to go there with it, but it just comes to hubris with me.
Well, and look, this is also very much connected to there being three major conferences that have yet to call it off.
Right.
I mean, if everybody had fallen in line, I don't think you'd be hearing any of this with the Big Ten coaches and players and parents, questioning the decision. Everyone would have just accepted, okay, that was the only choice to make, and they made it. But it's hard to say it's the only choice when you've got so many other institutions of higher learning that have made a different choice. And I'm always qualifying when I say these things with the phrase for now. Mm-hmm. We know that 2 weeks from now it's possible that everybody is on the same page. But I think that's the thing the Big Ten, players, parents, fans, everyone wants to know is, why did you feel like you had to call it at that point when these other conferences feel like they still have a little bit more time to work with before they would need to make that decision? And I think that's why we are where we are, is because they felt the need to make that decision as soon as they did.
Brad, I want your thought on likelihood here, as you're going to have Big Ten parents descend on the Big Ten office. And we're talking parents from Ohio State. We're talking parents from Penn State, Iowa, maybe Nebraska. You're going to have a lot of peaceful protesting folks in Big Ten gear Friday in Chicago. And from a PR standpoint, it's been brutal for the Big Ten, and it's still brutal with this open letter. Is there a window to reverse course and open up dialogue for those that can play to play? Or do you think the decision is absolute by Commissioner Warren and he won't revisit because that would absolutely look worse than as bad as he already looks.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you have a first-year commissioner, and this was the first big decision that he had to make as commissioner. If he were to be essentially forced into reversing course because of pressure, that really weakens him as a leader going forward. So I can certainly understand his reluctance to change course. And then on top of it, if you're a president of one of these universities and you end up caving and you go back on the decision that was made and say, okay, we're going to give this a shot just because the players and the parents are unhappy, what are you opening up yourself to with that precedent moving forward within your university? I mean, what other student groups might there be where you make a decision and then all of a sudden, students and parents are unhappy, and so now, like, well, you did this for the football team 2 years ago,
right? And
now you're expected to basically just turn over the running of the university to the parents. So I think there are good reasons that neither the commissioner nor the presidents would want to reverse this decision. And then I think when you start looking at the timeline of it, every day that goes by that these players aren't practicing, it's going to make it more difficult for them to be ready to play on, whatever date that they would end up starting the season. And look, at this point, if they were to make the decision tomorrow, I think it's still fine because they've been getting ready to play, up until about a week ago. But now, let's say they get another week into it. You've lost some degree of preparation. Now, the fact that they'd only be playing each other and they're kind of all in the same position, I mean, maybe that helps mitigate it, but. Still, I think from a player safety standpoint, which this is, in one way or another, has always been about that. You want to make sure that they are as prepared for the season physically as possible, and so you'd want them to get back into that groove practicing. I mean, they still haven't gone full pads yet, right?
No, they haven't.
I don't think anyone had reached that point, and so I don't know. It just seems to me that the longer they wait, the less likely it is that they could start up and be ready to play by late September, which is when some of these programs are, well, I should say the last ones to start are starting late September. So that's still doable now, but if you let much more time go by, then it might be more difficult.
Brad, we got about 30 seconds left, so I'm going to need your quick thoughts here. But will this letter from Kevin Warren put to bed these rumors that Nebraska, Ohio State, Penn State, maybe Michigan want to go play their own season this fall anyway?
Well, I think it's going to put to bed any rumor that the Big Ten, might be willing to sponsor that. I heard that rumor myself, and it just didn't make any sense because, if you've got 6 or 7 teams say they want to do this, the others are going to come out, well, we want to play too. How do you exclude conference members? So to me, there were a number of problems with it. And but yeah, certainly this puts to bed, any type of rumor that the Big Ten would say, yeah, that's cool. If you want to do it, go ahead.
Brad Edwards. Brad, thanks for your insight and opinion on continued crazy mess in the Big Ten with college football. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll check in soon. Appreciate you.
Maybe 1 week this will end. All right.
I hope so. That's right. He said it best. Maybe 1 week this will end. Well, open phones for you. Reaction to the Big Ten letter next.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Okay, open phones at 466-377-6800, 825-5865. Email Chris@HailVarsity.com. Twitter @Schmidt_radio, @Herbal Essence. Maybe you've scrolled through the Big Ten open letter. Let us recap a second. The open letter from the Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren says the decision to postpone fall will not be revisited. If I could translate that into Peaky Blinders language from Thomas Shelby, bleep off. Now, bleep off. Fall will not be revisited. Let's get into factors. Primary factors for the spring. Transmission rates continue to rise. Outbreaks when students return. Yeah. Myocarditis, the uncertain risk was unacceptable at this time. And lack of certainty about contact tracing and mitigation for contact sports. Contact tracing and quarantining would risk frequent and significant disruptions. Access to accurate tests is limited. Testing supply chain concerns. One more thought, then it's all you. Task force will study the number of football games that can reasonably be played in a full calendar year. Who's on the task force? What are you studying? And is this medical information the same medical information you use that's been thrown out by other doctors or questioned by other doctors, specifically on myocarditis? There's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. So as a Big Ten fan, or at least a Nebraska fan, is this acceptable? You finally got something beyond a crappy interview with the Sports Business Journal today where nothing was answered. And then you've got 8 days ago his colossal clown show with the Big Ten Network. Now you get a letter. And the overwhelming vote by the Council of Presidents. You've got no uniformity where some folks say, yes, there was a vote. No, there wasn't a vote. That's still very murky. And give me overwhelming. 3-2, 8-6. You don't have anyone that was there answering. Don't know if it was a blood oath or what. But no one's peeping up. Give me numbers to the vote. Give me minutes from the meeting as to the discussion and if that discussion turned into a vote. Let's go to Jim real quick before you jump in here, Elijah. Jim, welcome into Hail Varsity. Go ahead.
Yeah, Chris, it just seems to me nobody's saying anything, the reason why, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but doesn't it seem that this may be as much politically motivated as anything, especially the schools in the Big Ten?
It's different in that aspect, Jim, with just where you look at the states line up and where they may lean politically. I hope to God that's not the case. I really do.
Too. I really do. Yeah.
I just think I think this is a tug of war between academia and athletics.
Well, I hope you're right, but I think the reason that you're not hearing anyone come out and tell you exactly how this was derived may go a little deeper than that, Chris. But I'll shut up and listen to you. Thank you.
Jim, thanks for the call. I think the people that helped get Commissioner Warren hired, they're all trying to err on health and safety, promise you. But there also are other concerns and interests and constituents. And I think there's people Commissioner Warren's listening to, vote or no vote, that may have some more weight. It's clearly not a uniform Big Ten.
So we've had an interesting tweet here from Kevin Noon. He's of Buckeye Grove, which is a Yahoo Sports site for Ohio State. And he's obtained a statement from Ohio State AD Gene Smith. It says, while a decision has been made by the presidents of the Big Ten Conference to postpone the fall season, we view this as a temporary delay. And Dr. Johnson, the president of Ohio State, has directed us to prepare for the possibility of bringing at least some of our fall sports back to practice and competition by the end of the year. We are actively planning for the winter and spring seasons for all sports, including the return of football.
So the football plan is moving forward for winter.
Interesting that some fall sports could come back by the end of the year, though. That'd be volleyball, I assume, is the sport I'm thinking of. Volleyball, maybe soccer.
I would love, yeah. I mean, what's that Twitter handle again?
It's Kevin Noon. send you this tweet real quick.
No, I got it. So, Gene Smith is. So, do you think he's leaving the door open, like they're trying to get football in the fall, or no?
That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, in considering the Dr. Johnson there is the president of the university, said a decision's made by the presidents of the Big Ten Conference, but our president has said to prepare for the possibility of bringing at least some of our fall sports back.
Okay. So again,
it's just confusion. Everyone's doing different things. Everyone's saying different stuff.
Yeah. Well, like Ohio State, they don't. If they step up and say no, what are they going to do? I mean, you can pull a Texas or an Oklahoma here and go hostage situation on the league. You know, I don't know that a lot of the Big 12 wanted to move forward and play. Some did, some didn't. But guess what? Texas and Oklahoma probably said, you're playing or we gone. Ohio State, what if Ohio State says, all right, I call your bluff, Commissioner Warren, about revisiting? Got a chance to win a national championship this year. What are you going to do about it? You going to kick us out? You going to fine us? You going to sanction us?
My view on it is this statement from him was so fast after Kevin Warren's statement. I don't think this was something that they just whipped up in the past 20 minutes.
No.
They've been ready for this statement from Kevin Warren, and they've had this statement of theirs ready to come back.
So you think Ohio State's leaning towards continuing to explore fall?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my takeaway.
Because read it again, and talk about the winner side of things.
While a decision has been made by the presidents of the Big Ten Conference to postpone the fall season, we view this as a temporary delay, and Dr. Johnson has directed us to prepare for the possibility of bringing at least some of our fall sports back to practice and competition by the end of the year. We are actively planning for the winter and spring seasons for all sports, including for the return of football.
See, the end of the year part is what, from a timeline standpoint, gets me. So, end of the year, you bring them back. They start training in December when there's an empty campus, and then you move forward to play in January versus a fall football season. When he says end of the year, I don't know. If the Big Ten has enough people cause ruckus, can you coup this thing? That'd be interesting.
I'm just seeing this as Kevin Warren tried to put everything to bed with his statement, and it seems like Ohio State is not ready to go to bed.
Good.
I don't think Nebraska's ready to go to bed either.
No, they have been very upright in this whole process. Nebraska has been. Can we just start a movement for Gene Smith to pull double duty? Be the AD at Ohio State and the commissioner of the Big Ten? Or let's get Godfather Alvarez in as commissioner of the Big Ten. Let's get this dude out. I just can't take it anymore. And if you're basketball, you're freaking out. If you're basketball, you got Coach K talking. You got other head coaches talking about, our sports will be gone, and so will your NCAA tournaments, NCAA, that you print money off of if you don't allow college basketball to happen, or have if you don't have another NCAA tournament. I mean, they're already starting that narrative.
I mean, did you see that this weekend the NCAA still sent out an email indicating that they were going to start their sales of 2021 NCAA basketball tournament tickets?
Here's what I think is going to happen with college basketball. I think you're going to get a bubble situation or a hub situation. Because right now, everyone's slapping the NBA on the back about how well they've handled this. You look at the COVID test, you look at the product, and it's been really pretty good. I mean, especially with some of the upsets that may be brewing with your top seeds. People are going to shift to the hub setup. And the hesitancy on that is the amateurism sticking point. The other side of this, too, is maybe this is just union busting. You want to complain about not getting yours or getting paid or being compensated fairly, fine, screw you, we will take all sports away under the umbrella of health and safety.
That seems a little tinfoil hat to me.
Okay.
I think the Big Ten knows where the money is made, and the money is made by playing football.
Oh, completely.
I don't think they'd go take away the football season just because we have
I'm
a
just
union.
throwing that out there. The unionization thing's a tough nut, man. Here's the problem, though, and I don't have numbers on this, but when it comes to money into a university, I think the academic folks, because of their grants, their research dollars, probably blow the athletic number out of the water. Probably, what was it? You had $150 million to Nebraska in research grant dollars, and you had $54 million for football, 3-to-1 ratio. That's something that is there. Adam Rittenberg is tweeting out the Gene Smith response. So the good thing here is you have Ohio State's president that will be serving on the new return to competition task force. I hope that Nebraska will get to appoint who they want. We'll continue on Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Lincoln Orthopedic Center. Dr. Ben Woodhead with us. Dr. Ben, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going good. How about yourself, Chris?
We're hanging in. We are holding our breath for maybe some football this fall. We'll see how things transpire with the Big Ten, but NFL. And one of the guys I loved watching is Gerald McCoy, really high-level player at Oklahoma. Decade in the league. McCoy, the number 3 pick right after Sue, and McCoy was a staple down in Tampa in front of Levante David. Free agent deal. Sue's been in Tampa for a couple of years. Gerald McCoy brought in to kind of replace the departed Malik Collins. And McCoy, just a tough injury to report yesterday. And it sounds like a quad tear. McCoy has been released, but he was doing a drill and stepped on accidentally by a teammate in one of those routine drills. And the guy couldn't put any weight on his leg as he got helped to the locker room. Doctor, Ben, tell me here what goes into that setup with how it could affect your quad, and then just the intricacies here of really ripping up your quad. It sounds pretty nasty.
Yeah, they can be tough and painful injuries. From a treatment standpoint, these just don't really heal without surgery generally. If you have maybe a less active person who's still able to kind of walk around and still be able to extend their knee, that might be a question that you could potentially try and do the non-operative route. But any type of high-level athlete or anybody that's going to require running, sprinting, any type of strength activity like that, really your only option is to go ahead and fix it. And so, it's really as opposed to people hear gruesome fractures or breaks in the bones, where you actually got to put those back together. The quad tendon's a soft tissue structure, so there's a variety of ways to fix it, but you're basically relying, once you do fix it, on that soft tissue to heal down to bone over time. And a lot of that requires, there's really not a quick way about it to get the healing going. You're really looking at a 6-week type of recovery where you're just waiting for that thing to sock down and heal.
Dr. Ben Woodhead's with us, Lincoln Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday, and we're talking Gerald McCoy and his quad injury. So, without being too insensitive, when I look at McCoy's age and mileage, is this a career ender for the guy?
I think that's a good question. I think it's certainly something he certainly can come back from.
Okay.
But as we know from an NFL standpoint, the more birthdays you have, it's certainly not helping your chances by getting signed by a team, whether you have an injury or not. And so I think that's the kind of the uphill battle that he's dealing with is, is somebody going to be willing to take a chance on him after injury? Then the thoughts start coming, is he injury prone? Is something like this going to happen again? Is he going to come back 100%? I think those are all the questions that, if a team is willing to take a chance on him, I just don't know. From a standpoint of getting back, to a functional level, I think he's absolutely going to be able to do that. It's just, is somebody going to take a chance on that?
Dr. Ben, a thought here. Let's go back into the procedure and just you mentioned there's different ways to go about this quad injury, this tear, and the tendon side of it. Just how messy and how busy is that region of the body to fix? And I know you mentioned the soft tissue side of things. Are those pretty delicate? Are those I don't want to say a headache, but are those kind of a pain to deal with, or is it something that it's just different versus the bone side of things?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. They likely got an MRI just to be able to kind of plan, before you go into surgery. A lot of times when you tear these quad tendons, it'll kind of tear right off of the bone, and so you have this tendon that comes down and attaches to the bone. So if that's the case, where it's kind of a clean tear right off of there, you actually put heavy stitches or sutures into the tendon. You can actually reattach it to the bone through some holes and some tunnels where you basically tie it down to. And so if that's the case, it's a fairly straightforward type of surgery. A big guy like him, you never really know how much of the tendon he actually tore and what other damage that he had that goes along with the injury. If he, maybe tears more in the middle, which is not as common, of the quad tendon, that's where it gets a little more messy, because you're basically tying or sewing, tendon to tendon, and, that's where it gets a little tricky.
Is this a region that has the good capability to re-heal once procedures are done? There are different parts of the body that are harder to heal. Is the quad a muscle and a region, and that tendon spot, does that heal pretty well, historically speaking?
Yeah, historically it does, because, once they actually fix him, they'll likely lock the knee in extension, more or less. He'll be in a brace or something like that, basically keeping his knee extended out where he's not putting any stress on that tendon repair. And so, yeah, and he's a young, healthy guy for the most part, you would expect. So, his tissue should be really good, as opposed to somebody that's maybe in the older age, or maybe not as nutritionally healthy, or, all those factors play a role. And so I think he's actually set up to have good healing potential. And I'm sure they'll get a great repair on it as well. And so, time is somewhat of just the essence with him. And if he follows the rehab protocol and really rests for the amount of time that they have him, he should heal.
Dr. Ben Woodhead is with us at Jock Doc Wednesday, Lincoln Orthopedic Center. We're talking Gerald McCoy, really brutal quad injury. Dallas has cut him, and we'll see what's next for the former Oklahoma star and number 3 pick overall. A thought here with the quad, is that region and that muscle, when we look at the defensive tackle position, is it more responsible for just that brute strength of being able to fend off the interior lineman, or is that part of what made Gerald special with that size and speed, that burst quality he had? How big a hit is this quad to that burst and then that strength?
I think it's just from an explosiveness standpoint, I think it certainly is going to play a role, as opposed to, a quarterback or maybe somebody that's not in that 3-point stance or getting down like that. I think it's going to play a huge role in, how well he heals and whether he's able to get back to that explosive nature. That's kind of, he's down on all fours a lot in terms of playing on defense. And so I think it's certainly a good question. And I think as long as he heals and rehabs, I think he'll be able to get it back.
Last thought here, Dr. Ben Woodhead with us, Lincoln Orthopedic Center. Gerald McCoy, our topic for a Jock Doc Wednesday. what effect does the quad have if you want to get lateral? I know that the north-south and let's go get the ball carrier and let's get a guard and center off of me so I can go hit the quarterback. But if I'm trying to chase something down, is the quad pretty important when it comes to being able to do change of direction?
I think if you're going straight lateral and you're planting on that leg and you're actually extending out for that explosive burst, I think it does matter from that standpoint. I think if he's just going from side to side, maybe it's not as important as we may think. But I just think the dynamics of the whole quad plays a substantial role just in the instinctiveness of playing that position. So I think it certainly will matter.
Dr. Ben, have a good week. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Absolutely. You too, Chris.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, interesting day, open letter. We had plenty of thoughts on that. We'll have some reaction to Ronnie Green's comments tomorrow. Reminder about moving, and maybe we've been thinking about moving. Conferences. And I'm sure West Blue to help you with that. West Blue Realty, the good folks can make 2020's move a smooth one. They specialize in residential home sales in Lincoln and surrounding communities. They'll make your next move smooth. And for a limited time, he mentioned Hail Varsity and West Blue Realty going to provide you up to $1,000 on hearing the closing of the next home purchase. And give Tom Luby a shout at 402-540-3768 or call Kelly Hofschneider. Kelly can help at 402-202-2312. It pays to work with West Blue. Realty.com is where you log on, get an appointment set up. They're located 1120 K Street, Suite 200, and they can also help you out with some agricultural land. Man, if you're looking to buy or sell ag land, they have an auctioneer. They can do sealed bids or general land listings, and they've sold land in different parts of the great state of Nebraska. WestBlueRealty.com. All right, plans tonight, Elijah. You have more syllabi to read through?
No, I have some introductions I have to write on for my online classes where I have to introduce myself in a couple hundred words. So
can't you just say, "Hey, well, jump on Zoom and I'll introduce it that way"? Is this a writing course you got to do?
No, it's just this is online courses in Nebraska now. So I don't know. It's kind of stupid, but you got to do what you got to do to get that degree. And other than that, probably watching basketball. I think we got Mavs Clippers tonight, so yeah. I'm excited for that one. If we get Kristaps in the game for the whole time, not getting ejected for a dumb reason. But.
Yeah, there was some. I thought Porzingis though was pretty stand up about getting tossed. I mean, he didn't pile on the refs,
even though the refs have been atrocious in these past 3 days of the NBA playoffs.
The refs are always kind of brutal, and they have their good and their bad like the rest of us. But don't be looking for a reason to launch a guy.
I mean, like, I get it in that you're probably it's like coming off the bench. You're cold. Like, you've had 5 months off of reffing NBA basketball. Now you got to come right back and do live action. Like, I get it, but you had the 8 games to acclimate. And now we're into playoffs. Like, we need you on your A game, refs. But I don't know. It's basketball is still fun. It's still the playoffs.
Who's going to check Dame?
No one.
You don't think anyone can step up?
I mean, when Dame Lillard's in the zone, when it's Dame time, the defensive player of the year couldn't stop him in the playoffs last year.
I know.
Who do the Lakers have that can stop him? Anthony Davis isn't fast enough side to side to stop him.
No.
LeBron James just isn't the same player he used to be defensively. He's bulked up. He's not going to stop Damian Lillard. You think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope can stop Damian Lillard? Portland presents a real matchup nightmare for that Lakers team. If the Lakers make it through that series, I think they'll make the finals. But they've got to make it through Dame first.
Well, that'll be must-see. And Mavs are good, man. I don't mind Cuban at all. I like the Clippers. And I like Kawhi and Paul. And see if that's entertaining again. And we're back at it tomorrow. Bill Dolman's going to be with us. Brandon Vogel, Pride of Chicago's Danny Burke will be back at it at 4. Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Thanks for tuning in.